It's not? Oh, it is time.
No, shut
Oh,
up.
wait.
We're live, so just intro, welcome people. They're going to start coming.
Welcome, folks. We're here at the USCCA studios. I'm Kevin Michalowski with noted criminal defense attorney Tom Grieve, and we will be answering your questions here live. I'm going to let you know that, hey, if you enjoy the content from the USCCA and you're interested in joining, we have 4 free bonuses that you can get right now when you join, but they end really soon. All you need to do is click the link in the description to learn more about what they are. They're so good they won't even tell me what they are, but there's 4 of them and they end soon. So we will begin answering questions in a bit. We'll let the crowd build up a little bit.
Let the energy hit
the room. You know, for posterity's sake, since we are being immortalized on this live stream, I think, right? They get saved. It's out there, right? So I don't know if people caught me laughing right after we went live, and maybe now, if you did, folks might understand, depending upon how much it picked up as we went live, why I'm usually smiling or grinning or holding back a smile during the introductions, because it's quite common that something really funny happens, whether it's banter or whatever, but something really funny happens right as we activate the cameras. And then you go into your intro, and I'm just sitting over here just trying to hold it together or whatever the case.
Because I am both incredibly funny and amazingly professional, so I can turn it on and off. Just
Deeply charismatic, it is true, and I hope the lens picks that up.
yeah, and I don't know if they can really feel the energy through the camera on the other side. Let's begin, and we're going to start with the question that makes everyone the angriest. We're just jumping right in with this one. My question is, if I'm walking around my neighborhood and a person is with their, and this makes me chuckle, medium to large dog, and is walking near me, and the dog tries to bite or attack me, can I shoot the dog? And, you know, when we talk about this and we say that you can shoot a dog who is attacking you if it's going to cause death or great bodily harm, but you can't shoot a person who is attacking your dog, it's just going to light up when it goes like that. But this question is, the medium to large dog is attacking you. Can you shoot the dog?
Well,
Okay, so animals are not regulated as people, it's regulated as property. So let's start there. That is not a controversial statement. That is a statement of law. Then people need to write to their state legislatures, not to me. I didn't, believe it or not, Internet, I did not pass or write or really have anything to do with that law, other than repeating its existence. That said, so we've got to define what attacking means, because to one person, attacking is, yeah, it's snarling at me on a chained leash 2 lawns over.
Yeah.
Okay. That is not, you know, Debbie, get your Glock, like, time to do a mag dump, all right? Like, let's be clear, that is not that situation. I don't know where I got Debbie from, but I like it. We're going to go with it. If it is snarling at you and approaching, could you make an argument for the fact that, you know, that dog's going to do something? Sure. Am I going to be pulling the trigger at that point? No. I think if it's charging you and it's not on a leash and it's about to do something, or it has done something, especially if it has done something, if it's bitten you, it's bitten your child, it's bitten your friend, your significant other, whoever, obviously that's a very different scenario now, because now we're in defense of self. And not only that, but we're defense of self against property. But if it's snarling and it's menacing you, but it hasn't done anything yet, we all know what's going to happen. If you pull that trigger, the owner's going to come out and say, you know,
Best dog in the world.
Best dog in the world. I realize there's a bunch of police reports and kids that have wound up in the hospital, but there's no way that Fluffy would have done anything to hurt you. That's going to happen, and you may have a lawsuit or police reports on your hands.
And people need to understand too that that shooting an attacking dog, especially in a neighborhood, you're walking around a neighborhood. This is a dynamic situation, and if you're pulling out your gun in a neighborhood and shooting at a small target that is moving rapidly, that may be already biting you, you got to make sure you don't shoot yourself, you don't shoot someone else, you don't launch someone bullets down the street. This is a very serious situation, and I'm a big fan of alternate weapons, and if I can pepper spray a dog before shooting it, I'm going to, because that ends the situation right now. Then things are over, and that dog probably won't ever come near me again.
When you got ricochet.
Is you've got, what's the backstop? You've got target isolation issues if it's darting around, all that kind of stuff. I mean, you really have what might be the perfect storm, especially if it's weaving in and out of people. If you're walking with 3 or 4 friends and it's ducking in and out of people, trying its best impersonation of a velociraptor to rip out your calves or something like that. That's gonna be tough.
And absolutely. And again, I want to make it clear out there. I'm looking right at the camera now. We are not advocating the shooting of dogs. We are advocating shooting to stop an imminent threat. And if it happens to be a dog that you shoot, well, that dog was a threat. So I'm not an anti-dog person. So don't yell at me about that. Moving on to question number 2. Do spousal rights apply in a self-defense situation? Is it considered privilege? So I'm assuming they're talking about, can the spouse be compelled to testify against you in a self-defense situation?
Okay, so
there's a lot of misunderstandings of different privileges that are out there. So for spousal privilege, really what we're talking about, and again, check your local listings because it will vary from state to state, but we're generally talking about communications that are intended to be private, okay? So for instance, if a police officer shows up and the spouse blurts out, yeah, Frankie just shot so-and-so for no reason, and Frankie's, the husband, that's going to be coming out at trial, okay?
Yeah, excited utterance.
I get that. An excited utterance, there's many different theories of evidence that you could probably use to get that out there. Now, conversely, if, there's private communications, not jail phone calls, those are not private, but if there's private communications between spouses, then that's something that's privileged, and you can raise that as if the DA asks a question about, so what conversations did you have immediately following the shooting about the shooting, just to pick something that's very clearly in that box, right? Okay, well, it's a private intended conversation and so forth. If you have a conversation in public through a bunch of, posting on each other's social media walls, that's probably not going to be considered intended for private communication. So even though it was a conversation between 2 spouses, that by no means necessarily means it rises to the level of triggering the privilege because it wasn't intended as private. Now you have private chat messages going back and forth, different point then.
So,
and this reminds me of a case that I heard of happening in New Jersey. New Jersey State Police are famous for targeting out-of-state license plates that may be connected to your concealed carry permit. And they pulled over a car because the person had out-of-state plates and it said, yep, they have a concealed carry permit. And one trooper spoke to the driver at the back of the vehicle and the other trooper spoke to the spouse in the front seat. And the trooper at the door speaking to the spouse said, does your husband have a gun? Where does he usually keep it? And she said, here in the center console. And that, made the world blow up for those folks on that trip.
on the prison, right?
Yeah, bad things are going to happen when that occurs in New Jersey.
That also just goes to show, I mean, number one, New Jersey, but number 2 is we're talking about, it's one thing if you educate and train yourself on how to handle different situations as they arise, whether that's law enforcement, whether that's the attacking dog or whatever. Mm-hmm. But that may not do you much good or enough good if you don't share that information with your loved ones, with your best friends, or whoever it is that you're spending significant amounts of time around. You can, perhaps they can spot some sort of pre-threat indicators that may help to diffuse or avoid a very bad situation that you missed. There's all sorts of reasons why you should not be hoarding this information to yourself. I mean, by all means, hoard, but hoard and share it's amazing how many cases I have seen, both as a prosecutor, former state prosecutor, as well as a defense attorney, where police do just exactly what you said, which we call good police work, right? Where, divide and conquer when it comes to talking to your witnesses and so forth. Then we'll compare the stories in the back end, and sometimes you go into it with a specific strategy of what we're trying to accomplish. And it's amazing how if one person's pretty savvy about something, the other person likely isn't. Yeah. And it just, everything crumbles as a result.
Absolutely. Question number 3, and wide open. This is going to be the it depends category here. Can I get arrested for brandishing? And I'm going to say, well, there's a difference between allowed and able, and a police officer is able to arrest you. It might not stick. I mean, but brandishing can be a problem.
Brandishing can be a problem. Now, as you and I have talked about,
Brandishing per se, which is to say the actual act of brandishing. So taking out a firearm from a concealed location, kind of waving it around or displaying it without actually pointing it at another individual and without discharging it, right? I think that's a pretty fair definition, pretty middle of the road definition of brandishing, right? So we're pulling it out, we're displaying it in some way. Maybe we're displaying it provocatively by waving it around, but we're not pointing it at another person, right? Not many states have a specific statute criminalizing the act of brandishing.
Yeah, we can't find the word anywhere when we're looking for our state laws page.
right,
It's now, there may be display of firearm, but typically we're going to come under one of 3 different statutes, okay? We're going to come under some sort of disorderly conduct while armed. So somebody took out a firearm, they didn't point it at somebody, but they displayed it in such a way that may be combined with the context, the circumstances, or perhaps something else that you said or allegedly said creates a disorderly conduct while armed situation. Okay, so that's one scenario. Second scenario is you're accused of pointing at another person, which may be a misdemeanor or a felony, depending upon the state that you're in. And keep in mind, prosecutors also have a fairly broad latitude as far as deciding how they want to change it or and how they want to charge it, whether it's misdemeanor, intentionally pointing a firearm, or something else. Like, you are allowed to point firearms at people if you are defending yourself. So there's always that self-defense privilege. And then the third aspect, kind of dovetailing off the, well, prosecutors have kind of oftentimes a ladder of options that they can climb, is some sort of recklessly endangering safety. That, look, if I pulled out a firearm, some people may say, well, look, that in and of itself is a reckless act. Okay, and to be clear, I'm not saying that it is every single time. It might be sometimes under certain circumstances, but it certainly isn't every single time, right? It's all context informed. So the significance of that is you can run into recklessly endangering safeties, or RESs. That could be misdemeanors, it could be felonies, it could be very serious felonies, they could be still serious, but nonetheless misdemeanors. So the actual act of brandishing, is that going to be illegal? I would not be surprised if somebody recalls what had happened very differently than the way that you did, and perhaps embellishes or adds to it, that you pointed it in some way, or you maybe accompanied some particularly colorful language, and as a result you were disorderly, you were reckless, or you're intentionally pointing. That's typically the formulation that I see, one or combination of those 3.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're right. You'll get more than one story when we're taking witness statements out there. So this is an interesting one, similar to a video. This is how this question starts, similar to a video. So I want to know what kind of videos this guy is watching. But if I were in the shower, hear me out, okay, and my gun was in my safe in my room with my wife, would she be able to get the gun and use it, assuming it's the right scenario? There's lots more information I need here. Does she have the combination to the safe? Is she a prohibited person from owning the gun? I guess the real question, if we drill down into this, is can my wife use my gun to defend herself?
right.
So so let's start once more with general self-defense law. So if you're in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm, you're then privileged to use deadly force, right? And keep in mind that exact language will vary from state to state and time to time. So again, check your local listings. But generally speaking, from a legal can I do it or ought I do it, if the answer to that question is yes, then even if they're a prohibited possessor, there's a chance that your particular state or jurisdiction will have some sort of necessity carve out saying that person can now use a firearm or use a weapon or a tool or piece of equipment that they're not otherwise privileged to use in order to defend themselves. Now, can they in the physical sense, something you alluded to, well, I don't know, do they know the combination of the safe? Do they have enough time? Are they properly trained under stress to spin the dials or to punch in the code and all that kind of stuff? Have you recently changed the batteries on the safe? If it's a one of those digital keypads or something? Yeah, all great questions.
If it's a biometric safe, have you logged her fingerprints into the safe? I mean, there's a
Right.
lot of different things going on there, but it's not. If she's actually defending herself and doing that legally, whether it's your gun or hers, probably isn't going to make much difference. So. Here we go. So if a cop pulls you over, can they tell if you have a carry license by your state ID or tag? Some states do connect the two, the driver's license and the concealed carry permits. Some states do not. I know Wisconsin does not, but there are some states that do. I think Florida is one of them, and some others. So didn't even need you on that one, Tom. Yeah, we're going. Waiting now for more questions to roll in from the producer's chair over there. If my driver's license is suspended and I have bench warrants for unpaid tickets, can I still obtain my concealed pistol license? I live in Michigan. If you got to go to the police station and have anything to do with this, they're going to want to have you clear up those warrants. And that was always the friendly thing to say out there. Well, you got some warrants. This is the best way to clear them up. We're just going to take you to jail and let you take care of that. So,
Pride.
yeah,
That's what that is.
right there. Take care of those warrants. So I know you're not an attorney in Michigan, but wow, DL suspended and bench warrants. I don't know that you should be going and applying for your permit.
I don't
Know the specifics of Michigan law. I don't know what the bail conditions would have been that has resulted in this individual having bench warrant status. And bench warrant status, for those of you who do not know, means that you have been criminally charged in a case and you have been set on bail, and then you allegedly have not complied with your terms and conditions of bail. So maybe you had a failure to appear where you missed a court date. Maybe something else happened. Who knows? Okay. But I don't know what any of those conditions would have been. I can tell you from my Wisconsin eyes, I don't see how that would necessarily conflict with any of the Wisconsin concealed carry statutes. It might be a bit of a black eye in your case and not something that I would be super happy about having to argue why that should be held out of evidence in front of a jury at a self-defense trial. But at the end of the day, that does not change the self-defense law itself, right? And subject to your state's particular licensee rules, you'd have to check to see whether or not that results in a suspension or revocation of your carry privileges.
Yeah. And are your bench warrants? Well, it says for unpaid tickets here, so it's probably not felony level.
Presumably, all right.
Depending on how many tickets you got.
I have had people call into my office saying I've got a couple tickets, and it turns out to be a felony OWI. So I never say never.
Absolutely. Very good advice. Thank you. Folks, if you are enjoying this content right now, and why wouldn't you be? I mean, look at us both. And you're interested in joining the USCCA. We have 4 free bonuses. They're out there right now. You can get them when you join, but they will end really soon. All you need to do is click that link in the description to learn about what those bonuses are. I am not even authorized to tell you they're that great, but they're going away soon. This guy services dumpsters for a living. How much trouble can I get in carrying on somebody's private property? For example, somebody sees my firearm while I'm doing my job in their driveway. Well, are you a legal gun owner? That's my first question. I mean, you're just carrying a gun, and there's 25 states out there right now that say you don't have to have a permit to carry a gun.
Right.
So we've got a person, a weapon, a time and a place issue to deal with, right? So person, are they a prohibited possessor? Because if the answer is yes, then the answer is yes. Okay, you cannot carry that, and yes, you can get into trouble. There's a weapon. Does it have ground-off serial numbers? Is it a stolen firearm? Yep. Is it an undocumented full automatic, does it have a Glock switch on it, right? That can obviously get you into trouble. Reasonably speaking, he's obviously not asking about either of those. Right. We're really focused on the last two. So one is what you brought up, which is, well, what's the carry status? Am I lawfully open carrying, lawfully concealed carrying, and maybe it was just incidentally displayed while I was going about my work? And then lastly, am I going to be able to carry in that person's driveway during the conduct of my business and so forth? So the last part, which is I suspect what the viewers really kind of keyed in on, is unfortunately going to be a really, really, really state-specific thing. My strong suspicion is that they're probably going to be okay in most jurisdictions. There's a couple jurisdictions I might be somewhat fearful of. Just instinctively, New York State always comes to mind. Certain places on the coasts just intuitively come to mind. I'm not suggesting that's the case, to be clear. I'm just saying if I'm trying to issue spot and place money on bets like a craps table of like, Where is it going to come up? Where are the dice going to come up saying that's illegal? That's where I'm looking. But, I mean, to my knowledge here in Wisconsin, I don't see anything illegal with it, provided that the locations that I'm servicing, it's not a post office, I'm not on school grounds. In other words, there's no sensitive place issues that I'm dealing with.
And I will suggest, again, go to uscca.com/laws and make sure that you check out your state laws and learn them inside and out. Folks, you're responsible for that. That's your gun. It's on your person. You are responsible. So it's another question about dogs, and I can see the producing staff just going to keep feeding them to us as we go here. If I'm walking my dog and another random dog tries to kill my dog, can I shoot it? So now, can you use deadly force against a dog that is trying to kill your dog?
So definitely maybe is the answer. And here's why. So we have a host of, okay, we've got the target.
So there's target identification. Do we have target isolation? And again, I'm picturing two dogs, going back and forth. Now, maybe they're both on leashes, or your dog's on a leash and the other dog isn't, and it's circling or something like that, right? But if you're in more of a suburban or urban area, you're in a concrete jungle sometimes. Bullets ricochet, right? It's not like it's just going to hit the asphalt and stop, or the concrete and stop. So you're going to be responsible for those going down range. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind is, again, if that dog is not a stray and if it does belong to someone, rest assured that Fluffy's owner is going to say, there's no way my dog would have done something. You just murdered it, or you just shot my dog for no reason. Exactly. So you're going to run into that scenario is what you're going to run into. And again, I'm by no means suggesting that that's fair. I'm just saying this is what I see, right? It's very rare that everybody agrees, yeah, sure, yeah, I attacked him, I tried to stab him, and understandably he shot me in my stomach, right? It's like, no, he tried to rob me, and that's why I had the knife, said the 10-time felon, right? That's invariably the kind of information that winds up coming out, and you get a he said scenario or something like that. All that being said, you are technically allowed to use non-deadly force to terminate an interference with your property. So the arguments for this would look something like this. Under the law, an animal, a pet, is property. And you have property interfering with property. So one argument is, well, look, you can use up to the level of non-deadly force, okay? Because you're ultimately, at the end of the day, you're trying to prevent or to terminate an unlawful interference with your property. Again, check your local listings, but that's generally what they are. And then in the process of doing that, suddenly you become the victim. Now that might change the law. Now there's also common sense argument of, if I've got a 90-pound insert vicious dog breed stereotype here that's going after my insert small passive dog breed stereotype here, are the prosecutors really going to flinch if the dog that is has this long police record, the aggressor dog has this long track record of all these police write-ups and tearing apart animals? Are they really going to look twice if I safely find a way to dispatch the animal and therefore to not only protect, Fifi, my dog, as well as all the other victims? I don't know. So to answer the question, because you're not getting an answer, and I appreciate that fact, but to answer the question, there may not be a strict answer to that question, because the discharge of a firearm will invariably be considered as deadly force, even if it's against technically a property target. And generally speaking, you cannot use deadly force to protect property. But once you insert all the different dynamics in here, particularly if there's a backstory involving that aggressor dog, you could have a different situation. But at a minimum, I'd say you're definitely running into some risk and liability of an arrest and criminal prosecution or tickets or something.
Yeah, and I'm going to say it outright, folks. If you think you got to deal with dogs, my best solution is pepper spray. It works amazing to change a dog's attitude. It certainly does. So, all right. Well, first, I got to let you folks know that if you're enjoying the content and you're interested in the USCCA, we have 3 bonuses. So if you're interested, you should click now before it becomes 2 bonuses, apparently, because I just watched it change on my screen right here. And these bonuses will end very soon, as you can see. So just click the link in the description if you're interested in joining the USCCA now. And this is just part of what we do here, providing all this great information, training, education, all of it. So we have another question. If I'm carrying legally in my purse and I'm carjacked or mugged, could there be legal consequences for me if my gun is stolen?
I think that as long as you, number one, it's obviously a lawful item. You're in a lawful location. You're not carrying an illegal firearm in an illegal place. Right?
It's not a stolen gun.
It's not a stolen gun. It's not a hot gun. You're not at some place you shouldn't be with it. All that kind of stuff. Let's just set all those issues to the side, and just someone just straight up stole it. Okay. You need to report the firearm. Okay. So report that, because what the doomsday scenario you're trying to avoid is that firearm winds up at a crime scene and your name is attached to that firearm.
Yep.
And the police come showing up at your door saying,
Why did this gun end up at a gang murder scene? And you're like, yeah, about that. So avoid that. Call it in.
And let people know. And folks, make sure that you keep a list of the make, model, and serial number of your firearms. Put that someplace separate from your guns, just in case something like this happens. So it's just standard record keeping 101. Go ahead and do that, and keep those numbers handy, so that if your gun does disappear, get stolen, get lost or something, you can report that and people know that it's out there. So this question, wide open, open-ended, Tom. I'm confused, actually, and I will have a discussion with the producer after this to give me better questions. What if someone is trying to steal my car from me at home and I catch them as they get in it or try to get me out on the road somewhere? End of question.
What? You read that in your producer voice, too. That's good.
Exactly how he stumbles through things.
yes.
I get that. I instantly recognize that.
I'm guessing what if means, can I shoot someone if they're trying to steal my car? I'm going to say no. It doesn't say from me. Okay. Steal my car from me at home, and I catch them.
Right. So
you cannot, okay. As a general rule, you cannot use deadly force to protect stuff, only people. So if you wake up, it's 2 a.m. in the morning, you've got your car parked outside in your driveway, and you see some guy trying to hotwire and pull it away, no, you cannot just start shooting at them, okay? If you are inside the car and someone's trying to break in, then there's a follow-up question. Number one, is there a castle doctrine for your car in your state or wherever it is that you're located where it creates a presumption that you're now in reasonable fear of imminent death or great bodily harm? If it does, and provided there's no, I'll use a medical term, contraindications.
Wow.
Whoa. Wow. It's a Wednesday.
Smarter just being near you.
Thank you. So in other words, look, anytime you hear that word, the P word presumption, there's an R word that follows it, rebuttable. So folks, castle doctrine, it's never a license to kill. It's nothing like what politicians and the media makes it out for. All it generally does is it creates a working presumption in your favor that, you know what, someone breaks into your bedroom at 2 a.m. I don't have to wait for them to hold the knife or plunge it into my chest to say, oh, this might be a deadly threat.
It's just one less hurdle you have to get over. There's still hurdles.
It creates a presumption. But if that person starts to retreat, I can no longer use deadly force, okay? If there's some sort of rebuttal to that presumption saying, no, that person was not a deadly threat to you, then you cannot use deadly force, all right? So bringing it back to this scenario, if I'm in that car and if someone starts to break in, and if I am in a castle doctrine state, then now there is a presumption that may have been created, subject to checking your local listings, whereby that person is now a deadly threat against me, and I may be able to apply a deadly force if they have broken into or is in the process of breaking into my automobile with me inside. Again, all subject to local listings. Yeah. If they stop breaking in, we're done. Okay.
If they run away, let them run away, folks.
If they stop breaking in, they're done, subject to the fact they're not bringing up like a firearm to shoot through the glass, or they're not. There's no other obvious self-defense issues showing why they are suddenly a deadly threat some other way. So at the end of the day, generally speaking, cannot use deadly force to protect property. So cannot shoot at or shoot the individual who's stealing your car with no one in it. If you're in it, check if Castle Doctrine applies. If Castle Doctrine does not apply, or if there's a rebuttal to Castle Doctrine, then we're going to be in a vanilla self-defense situation where you will need to be able to articulate why that person was a deadly threat.
Absolutely. And again, that's what we want, folks. You don't use your gun for anything except stopping a deadly threat. All right, here we go. My job does not allow firearms on the premises. Well, sir or ma'am, I don't know who wrote this question. In the post-COVID world, I would say go find another job. There's lots of jobs out there. Find a job that does allow you to have firearms on your person. I have a firearm on my person right now. What could I be facing if I defend myself with a firearm in a workplace shooter incident? Now, this person works at a place where there might be a workplace shooter incident. So again, I'm suggesting look for another job.
Sure.
So,
well, okay.
Couple of different things. All right. Are they going to be in what's broadly termed as a sensitive location? So courthouse, school, post office, maybe, things like that. Things that are just, doesn't matter what state you're in, they're pretty much all going to be off limits for carrying. Mm-hmm. The reason why I say that is because very oftentimes that will trigger just instant felony. Okay. Otherwise, if they're working for some sort of private business, maybe an office or a shopping mall, whatever the case may be, where it's posted, then subject to the penalties in that state, which could be tickets, misdemeanors, or felonies, you'll be subject to those particular penalties. Worst case scenario, not to mention presumably some sort of discharge from employment and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it could spin around on you very quickly. I'm getting the note here that this is the last question, so I will remind people we have 3 bonuses, free bonuses. If you're interested in joining the USCCA, click the link in the description, and you can join the USCCA and get those 3 free bonuses. And this is the last question, and we're going to drag this one out then because I just like being here with you, Tom. So I am an EMT, and I have a concealed carry permit. God forbid there is an incident, and I need to use my weapon to stop the threat. I love the language already as we go through this. If I don't give aid to the subject because he or she may become a threat again, could this hurt me legally? Now, I understand that in some places, EMTs and doctors and nurses and stuff are kind of obligated to give aid if available, if they're on the scene of something like that. They can't just turn and abandon folks. But if you're in a situation where you were reasonably fearing for your life and you needed to use a gun to stop that aggressive behavior, even though you are an EMT, I mean, do you have to give aid at that point?
Well, so it's going to, interestingly enough, I answered this question very recently for Sean. So Sean, if that's you, great seeing you. Otherwise, though, we got to really check our local state rules and laws. However, I'm going to be giving most of an answer here, but it's all going to be subject to, well, look, you got to check your local listings, okay? So yeah, there are some laws that basically compel first responders to respond in the event that someone's in need, okay? However, in my experience, there's usually some exceptions to that. So for instance, if the scene is not safe, that is a major exception, right? Bad guys tend to travel in packs. It is entirely reasonable and foreseeable that bad guy number 1 tried to rob you, or whatever the case may be. You shot to stop the threat, bad guy number 1 goes down. There's a pretty darn good chance bad guys number 2 and possibly 3, 4, and who knows how many are around the corner, ran away, running away. There's no guarantee they won't come back. Who knows what's going on, okay? All that we know is you just shot someone. You've now, everybody's identified as you as having a weapon. And what? You're going to go into tunnel vision in an unsafe area. And I'm just saying it's unsafe because someone just tried to kill you or rob you. So I'm just implicitly, it's an unsafe scene. It's an unsafe.
That's secured by law enforcement.
Law enforcement's there. That is unsafe in my view. And now you're supposed to go full tunnel vision with a weapon that you're going to have to reholster hurriedly, which can be a dangerous exercise by itself, let alone after you just had to pull the trigger in one of the most traumatic experiences of your entire life, where, you know, you're talking about muscle reflexes, you're talking about your motor reflexes going down, your fine motor skills dropping, and now you're going to do something that candidly might be somewhat dangerous to reholster so that you can administer first aid to the individual who just tried to kill you with their friends nearby. To my mind, there's a lot of exceptions that might speak to when it comes to there being an unsafe scene. But again, that's all subject to checking your local listings.
I think you've made it very clear that you could probably make a very good case that a reasonable person would understand that you might not be capable of administering effective aid at that point. And if that's the requirement that you must render aid because you have this training and you're working in this field, I think you could explain to prosecutors, judge, or jury if it got to that point, hey, a lot of things were going on, and I wanted to make sure that I got out of there alive first and foremost.
We
So.
can just ratchet up one, because you said we're giving them like the gold package today, right? So the gold package answers, drawing it out. Okay, a little extra. So here's the little extra on top. So, and I'm not a civil plaintiff attorney or any of that kind of stuff, but I am the black sheep in my family who did not go to medical school. So I'm a pilgrim in an unholy land of people in the medical field.
Your analogies, Tom.
Again, I'm just giving the folks something a little extra.
Black sheep, pilgrim, the whole.
I got to compete up here if I'm going to stay on your level or approach your level. So the point being is that, okay, so sometimes there's laws that will compel first responders to respond in this scene of an emergency, right? So the question is going to be next, what standard of care are they going to be held to if, for instance, there's a malpractice issue, okay? Sometimes states just have a, reasonable ordinary care, or look, they recognize the fact that you're responding out of a tool bag from the back of your truck and you just pulled over to help somebody with a car accident. Other times they may say something effective, look, you have the same standards of care as though you're in a hospital setting, which is insane and blows my mind that exists. And I'll tell you, as somebody who knows a lot of people in the healthcare field, you want to discourage first responders and folks in the emergency line of work from pulling over the scenes of accidents. Jack up that standard of care. A message to all the politicians out there: jack up that standard of care and watch those people stop pulling over, because they don't want to get sued for every last penny that they have.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Tom. It's always great to talk with you, to provide insight to our viewers. Thank you, viewers, for watching. Please comment down below if you like this kind of stuff. We'll keep doing more and more of it. And like I said, 3 free bonuses. If you're interested in joining the USCCA right now, click the link in the description, find out what those bonuses are. And if you want to make that call and join the USCCA, we would love to have you. I'm Kevin Michalowski, thanking you for Tom Grieve.